I think it's human nature to want to be successful. And so you have to set up goals or milestones or systems, probably more like that you can be successful in frequently and get lots of good positive feedback.
Hey, and welcome back to Building a Family Business here on Builder Funnel Radio, and welcome to 2021. Brooks, Wes, how are you guys today?
I'm pumped up.
Nice. I know I should have. I teed you guys up for a nice awkward silence there.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. So, but I think I'm doing fine, and I imagine Brooks is too.
Yeah. Well, Brooks is pumped. So
I'm pumped up. Yeah, I'm doing
Brooks. Yeah. Why are you pumped? Did you do some fun stuff over the holidays?
Did some fun stuff over the holidays. Went up to our cabin and did a bunch of skiing and some cross-country skiing. We got a new puppy a couple weeks ago, so we're enjoying that little Australian Shepherd, Tilly. So
what was the name?
Tilly, Tilly. So Tilly is super cute, probably the cutest puppy ever known.
Probably, yeah.
No, to me, that's right. That's good to know. I thought it was Tillie, so that's the way.
Oh, it's with a Y. So any gifts you send to her, like any monogram thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
make sure you spell that.
Gifts that I can send to her.
Yeah. So, the unfortunate thing, I just wanted to pass this on to our listeners, is that, whenever you buy a Chevrolet product, always buy the extended warranty. And, so perhaps you're driving a Chevrolet Suburban 1500 that has just under 60,000 miles. Perhaps take it to the dealer and have them look at that transmission before it breaks on you while you're driving to the mountain in a snowstorm. But that's for another day. So it'll probably part of my 2021 goals that I'll share later.
Yes.
So that I can tell was the fun part of the holidays.
The fun part of the holidays, yeah.
See, regular detective over here.
Oh, Sherlock Holmes.
Fun until it's not.
Until it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. I'm glad you're having fun with Tilly. And we won't talk about, I don't know what your Suburban's name is, but we won't talk about
it. The name is not able to be shared on.
Yeah, that's right. Mostly four-letter names.
Four-letter names. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is a rated R show, so you're welcome to share those names.
Yeah, probably.
I have to check the box every time when I'm uploading it. It's like, yes, there's cursing in here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like hide the children.
Wes, how about you? What'd you do over the holidays? Anything?
Well, it was an interesting holiday, and I'll probably leave it at that. But we did have overall a nice time. The weather was, good for a couple of weeks. It's usually good here in Colorado, so the sun was out. Beautiful day on Christmas Day, and so all in all, good. But for some reason, and Brooks will certainly attest to this, I've gotten better over the years, Mr. Grumpy at the holidays. So,
you always have been kind of grumpy.
Yeah, right. I think I've overcome that now, and but I'm always excited about the new year and excited about the fresh start and all of that, where I think lots of times the end of the year, we're being grateful for everything that's happened in our lives. It's positive, and, which is great. But then I always like that fresh start feeling of the new year.
Is that why you think you were grumpy? Is because you weren't to the fresh start yet, or?
No, I was just a grumpy little kid. I was just not pleasant to be around, So I have no idea why that was. Probably a lot of self-pity involved.
And yeah, based on Brooks's silence, I'll assume that's agreement by saying nothing.
Well, really, Brooks was the reason for my self-pity.
Used to be all about Wes till I showed up.
That's right. Oh my God, who's this? The interloper. I had a 5-year run. It was pretty good. Things were going just my way.
I go off to kindergarten, and all of a sudden, another little brother shows up. That's the problem.
Oh yeah. You can't leave the house. Let's just put it that way.
I was there so you could step on my back, so you could climb into the bus.
That's teamwork at its finest right there.
Teamwork at its finest. Yeah.
Well, Wes, you said you like the fresh starts, but you also mentioned, gratitude at the end of the year. Do you have kind of a process that you use for wrapping up a year and heading into the new year?
Well, I usually, I like Trello a lot since Trello came along. And so I try to write down the things that I'm grateful for over the past year. And I think, especially this last year, I've really tried to take more of a, what they say, attitude of gratitude or whatever it is, and taking time to really think through all the wonderful things that we do have to be grateful for, because I think it's human nature to focus on the negative. That's really what keeps us alive lots of times, is focusing on the negative. Really, I mean, as a hunter-gatherer, like, well, it's a nice day, I'm going to pay attention to tulips, or am I going to pay attention to the saber-toothed tiger that's about to decimate me? So I think as humans, we tend to be wired to watch out for negative things and focus on negative things. And so you have to consciously go, well, here's all the stuff I'm really grateful for, grateful to live in this wonderful country, and grateful for my family, and, all the things that grateful for good health. And then when you are grateful, I think then you can turn around, and that opens you up a little bit more to helping others, because you realize, truly have been blessed. And maybe there's some ways that you can reach out and help other people that are maybe struggling.
Yeah. I think that's good. I mean, I've noticed too, since just putting more focus on gratitude, you just tend to, I don't know, more opportunities come up, more good things happen. And I think it's just like you said, if you focus on the negative, you kind of see it. If you focus on the positive, you start to see that too. Do you do anything around like reflecting on goals you set, at the beginning of that past year, or milestones, or anything like that, as you're like preparing to figure out what you're going to do in the next year?
Well, I definitely, if you've made a list, then you go back and you pull out the list, you go, oh, that's what I said at the beginning of last year. But I think the interesting thing about just writing things down, and of course it becomes more powerful if you revisit the list, but just even writing them down, you will oftentimes come back to that list and go, oh, okay, I got 70% of that stuff done. Just by identifying it, and then that kind of, I think, works down into your subconscious, and you just start grinding away on it. You can certainly do up your percentages by pulling the list out and reviewing it on a regular basis, right? That's helpful.
I know. I feel like I learned that.
Yeah.
I started doing lists. It was right out of college, and I started writing down goals for the year. And I would do that. So I would just get out a sheet of paper, write everything down, and then I just put it in a drawer. And I literally wouldn't look at it all year. But then at the end of the year, go, oh, I got half the stuff done, and I never looked at it. Yeah. Imagine if I actually looked at it.
Yeah.
But I think we'll get into it, I'm sure. But I think over the years, I've realized from a lot of goal setting that where you don't achieve the goals, I think there's some other things that you got to attach on to the whole goal setting thing to make it work. I don't know, Brooks, how about you? I know you're a goal setter.
Yeah, Brooks, what's your process?
So our process, say our, because Heather and I do our goals together. So we have a spreadsheet, believe it or not. So we're not on Trello, but we use Excel. And so we'll sit down together at the end of the year. We'll go through and put all of our goals for the year. So it could be, health, wellness, financial, travel, yard projects, whatever we're working on, new things we want to learn, things like that. So we'll put those in just kind of side by side. And then we go back to it about once a quarter and go through it and see, okay, well, how are we doing on our list? Is anything changed? Anything that, because sometimes you'll put something on your list and you'll be like, 3 months later, you're like, yeah, I really wasn't that interested in doing that. And then being honest about it, am I taking it off because I'm afraid to do it, or am I just taking it off because, I really wasn't that interested in it. So that's how we approach our kind of all of our personal goals. And then we roll into that our business goals, which are what are we trying to do with the business, with our rental properties. And when we were operating our businesses, we would do that goal setting
as a, ownership group. And you kind of get into October, November, start doing your business planning and then setting your goals for the next year. So you roll out of the year before you leave for the holidays, you already know what you're doing in 2021. And probably you started to enact some of that in late November, early December to start making that happen. And then we just reviewed those goals weekly or monthly or quarterly as needed as an ownership team. And it was on the, on the steering committee agenda. Hey, where are we on our goals? Are they still valid? Are they not valid? What do we need to adapt? Like this last year, 2020 would have been if you'd sat down in the, in March, hey, how are we doing on our goals? It's like, well, we're throwing those all out and we're going to these new goals that are, based around the pandemic.
Yeah, I like that, I guess, nuance to the system of one, reviewing the goals and then identifying, is this something you still care about or are interested in? Or because sometimes you do put those things on the list. You're like, this sounds good when you're kind of sitting there writing down all this fun stuff that you could do in the year. But I think you made a good point in there, which is, are you afraid to go after this, or do you think you're not going to achieve it, and so you're just going to pull it off, so you can check all your boxes? Or are you pulling it off because you actually really just are like, yeah, this isn't important anymore? And then, yeah, it allows you to adapt if you actually review those quarterly, and say a pandemic hits, then you can go, okay, yeah, we need to shift this and things may look differently. And that's more of a reality-based decision, it sounds like. Do you find that when you were using this process, did you ever track, like, do you always hit all of your goals, if you're tracking on them quarterly and that sort of thing?
I mean, we would really try to be really diligent about hitting all of our business financial goals to make sure, because that really then drives the other things we get to do personally. And you're going to hit some of them. You're not going to, we're very diligent about that. Some years for Heather and I, we've been better about hitting more of our goals than others. And it depends on, I think sometimes if the business was taking up more time, or, the kids were taking up more time, you're going to put your personal goals are going to drop lower because number one, you've got to make sure you're making money so you can, provide for your family. And then your kids are growing. So you're trying to make sure that they're moving through time pretty quickly. So you want to make sure you're helping them out as they're moving along. And so sometimes your goals might drop to like, oh, I got 30% of my goals or something, but we always put exercise and health, kind of well-being up pretty high. So those things would happen regardless. If we didn't rebuild a back corner of the yard, yeah, who cares? We do that next year.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've found to be helpful, because same sort of thing, in business, you set a lot of goals, I do that every year. Okay, let's do our budget for the next year, and we're going to grow sales by 10%, and okay. And but no plan or system around that. And I think what really has helped me a lot in achieving goals is, instead, you might go, oh, I have a goal. Maybe it's, oh, I want to lose 30 pounds, or I want to do something else, Well, that's the goal. But until you do that, every day that you haven't lost the 30 pounds, you're not successful.
Right.
So, you're only successful when you hit the 30 pounds, and then you're successful for about a minute. And then you move on to not being successful again. So I think it's much more effective to look at the system, and maybe, that's what Brooks was referring to around exercise. Let's just use that as an example, or, I'll give you an example around our mortgage. So it's one of those things, I always think, oh, it'd be great to have the mortgage paid off, and years would go by, decades, and, you refinance and bump your mortgage back up, depending on what's going on in the business, things are down or up. And, but at some point, I think I'd read The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. Yeah. And just that idea of putting a system in place and doing incremental activities that you can actually do. And then, so I decided, well, sure, I'd like to pay off my mortgage, but what I really should do is install a system for making extra payments on my mortgage, and that's how I'll be successful. As long as I make an extra contribution to the mortgage every month, then that's how I'll gauge my success. And I paid off the mortgage in 3 years. But I didn't really concentrate on, I'm going to get it done in 3 years. I'm going to get it done in 2 or 5. I just said, my system is to make an extra payment of some sort on the mortgage every month. And that system really worked. Or you can do it around food. Like you guys tease me because I eat the same thing for breakfast, right?
Let's do a quick pop quiz. Brooks,
Okay.
What is the breakfast?
Oatmeal with blueberries and 6 egg whites, something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty damn close.
I think you missed 1 egg with the egg whites.
Yeah, 6 egg whites and an egg scrambled, and a cup and a half of oatmeal with blueberries. And I've been eating the same thing now for 12 years, right? But what I realized is that from a health or fitness system, if you're putting a system in place, by systematizing 1/3 of my entire food intake, that's kind of locked down. So that makes the other stuff easier to handle. I don't ever have to think about breakfast. So I get up in the morning, I'm not thinking about what I eat for breakfast, what I wear, anything like that. You pre-establish that when I'm going to exercise. That just kind of clears out your mind to think about other things. But by putting that meal plan in place and sticking with it, it's helped me to, keep my weight within a pretty tight margin year after year after year, which before I couldn't. You go up 10 pounds and down 10 pounds, up and down and up and down. So anyway, that's why I think the power of systems is pretty helpful. And also just freeing up your mind. If you have a system, I think, Brooks, you probably wear the same thing every day, right? Practically, right? And I do too. And, because why bother? If you don't have to think about what you're going to wear, you can think about something more important.
What about the guy? Remember for what that huge executive was? They thought he only owned 1 suit because it wore the same suit every day.
Yeah.
Well, he had 7 of the same suits, and he just rotated them and dry cleaned or whatever. But he didn't have to think about it because there's other things more important to think about than what shoes am I going to wear and what So
there's a reason Steve Jobs always wore a black T-shirt and blue jeans, because or turtleneck or whatever it was, but. As his uniform, didn't have to think about it because he had a lot more other stuff to think about. And so if you're looking to free up your mind to work on bigger problems, then I always think it's good to look at all the stuff that you waste your time thinking about. Like, what do I eat? What do I wear? When do I work out? Am I going to work out? All those kinds of things, which if you can get those down to a base program and set them aside and not think about them, then you can just cruise on. Get some stuff done.
Yeah, I find that, kind of translating that back to your business example of, hey, I want to grow by 10%, grow sales by 10%. And then it was just like, okay, we'll see what happens. What's the system behind that? Is it a certain number of phone calls? It is a certain number of marketing activities to generate the leads, but then you've got an activity that you can do in a system. And then you almost live with the results, whatever that may be. And like you said, it might take 3 years, it might take 1 year, but obviously you can make adjustments. But if you do that, you're much more likely to actually get to that goal than just kind of writing down the 10% and going, okay. And then, because it seems like it should work. You're like, hey, we'll grow, but then there's just nothing behind it, and everyone keeps doing the same thing.
Exactly. You are doing the same thing. You're just expecting a different result, which is insanity. So
the interesting thing is that if you took your goals and behind each goal, you said, first, let's collect the goals, whatever they are. And obviously you don't want to have too many goals because that makes it pretty hard to accomplish them. And then you put down what your strategies and tactics were to achieve the goal. It really becomes your business plan. It should support your business plan for the business, and also should support your personal plan for your personal improvement or your family well-being or whatever those things you're working on the home front. but you have to have some kind of tactics to work on. Otherwise, you're like, yeah, well, I hope sales increase 10% this week. Haven't done anything about it, but
Right. Yeah, I think picking that small activity that is the driver to get you to your goal, and making the execution of that activity your success metric.
Right.
So now I'm successful because I actually, went down and I put on my gym clothes and worked out for some amount of time. Whatever, it doesn't have to be a particular, maybe that's your success metric. I put on my gym clothes and went to the gym, or I went down to the basement and, got on the bike or whatever it was, for no particular set period of time. But you'll find that, well, that was successful. I got there. And then you want to do a little bit more, and, it kind of, your success breeds more success, and you do more. Same thing with the sales metrics, like Brooks was talking about. Like,
hey, your sales metrics.
I'm gonna do 25 calls. That's my success metric, and that's it.
Yeah, we read a book. I think it was either late 2019 or it must have been 2019, because we started implementing it at the beginning of last year, and it's called 4 Disciplines of Execution, but it's talking about exactly what you guys are hitting on, which is you set this goal, but then you break it down to, we break it down to leading indicators and lagging indicators. And your lagging indicators, what we're all really good at saying, hey, grow 10%. Well, there's only a way to measure that after it happens. And so you need something in the moment, in the day, in the week, in the month to do. And so those are the leading indicators. So that's, X number of sales calls. It's getting on the bike for 4 days a week for 30 minutes. It's eating certain type of food. It's okay. I can check that box. And then they kind of talk about those as your strategic bets. So you're saying, hey, I think these will get me to the goal. Then when we actually get forward a quarter, I'm going to measure, and am I actually on track? And if not, do I just need to increase the amount? Maybe 4 times a week wasn't enough. It needs to be 6, or maybe that's the wrong activity. So then you can make another strategic bet, try something different. But when we finally shifted gears to that, everything changed. And everyone, especially within a company, if everyone's got a leading indicator, something that they're doing every week to work towards that same goal, man, that made a world of a difference. And it sounds like that's basically what you guys are describing, is like, hey, have this goal, but then break it down to a system or a task or an activity, something that you actually have control over. Is that, Brooks, kind of what you're
Yeah,
saying?
absolutely. That's a good point. Something you have control over. If you're gonna, depending on wherever you are in an organization, if you're not calling all the shots, but you've set some goals around the area you're working in, then set things for you to do that are controllable by you, that supports the overall endeavor of the company. Because if you're thinking, well, Bob over here needs to do this to achieve our goals, but you're never going to get Bob to do that. So work on the stuff that's within your sphere of influence and within your control, and hopefully that'll then support, that'll be a building block for the rest of the company, whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious to hear from you. Like, how did you, you said with your owners group, you guys would set all the goals, and then you'd check on them either weekly, monthly, quarterly. How did you get buy-in from other team members, or share, what goals did you share with the team, and kind of like getting everyone rowing in the same direction?
Well, we had some people who would row a different direction. Sometimes that happens.
Going rogue.
Yeah. I'm taking my oar and I'm leaving. Yeah. So it was up to each business owner who had a different area that they ran. So Heather ran the accounting division, and Julie ran the design division, and Todd ran production division, and I ran the finance and kind of overall sales. And so everybody would take their work and then take it and work with their teams to try to accomplish those goals. And like anything, it's always challenging, depending on the ability of each manager to lead. We had different levels of success, at different times. So, and sometimes you'll have great team members that really everything's really clicking, and sometimes you're changing team members. have the right people in the right seats. And so, yeah, that's probably one of the biggest challenges of business, don't you think? I mean,
yeah, and I think what was good about your system with your leadership group is that you did have a leadership group. So from an accountability standpoint, I think accountability is a good driver too to getting things done. I always found that if I'm only accountable to myself, it's pretty easy to move the goalposts, closer instead of further away or whatever it happens to be. So it's kind of like you said, Spence, you erase the things on your list, oh, why did I take that off? Because I couldn't do it, or it was too hard, or whatever. So I think if you don't have, like Brooks said, where you get co-owners to help hold each other accountable, then, because you're all working in different areas, then try to find somebody that will help you or step into that role as an accountability buddy that can do that for you. And it could be a good friend, it could be a mentor, it could be a coach, though that's always tough because you're paying them. So if you don't like the fact they're holding you accountable, you can always fire them. So that I'm sure that's why many coaches get fired. because
they're actually doing their job. Yeah.
You're holding me accountable. I'm getting tired of this. And so anyway, but I think that's a helpful strategy to have somebody know what your goals are and task you with it, or your system, know what your system is and are you executing your system? And I still go back to that. I'd say I would prefer systems over goals more than anything. I mean, generally the direction you want to go, but that very specific goal, if I want to be this by this date, I would rather have just a system that you think will get you there, that you can modify if you need to, but that you can just execute over and over and over again. Give you that success feel.
Would you say, Wes, would be better just to have something like, I want to grow 10% a year over the next 3 years, something that's longer out there versus, just like I want to grow 10% this year. I mean, and then put the system behind it too. Or is it better to have a system that says, oh, I want to be at $50 million and then start put systems in place to get to $50 million?
I think I would go with the latter, which is, my ultimate goal is $50 million in sales. And what are the systems that have to be in place that will allow me to get there?
Got it.
I don't know if I'll get there next year or if I'll get there in 30 years because there's so many other unknown factors
right.
in the economy and everything else. But if my ultimate goal is to get to this point, then all I can do is really work on my systems that drive me in that general direction. And I think, we were talking, was it last week we were talking about, or a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about planning. Plans are useless, but planning is everything. I think Winston Churchill said that, or MacArthur, or someone like that, during World War II. And so that's really what the system thing is about: is planning, executing small, achievable steps, see if it's moving in the right direction, continue to refine that.
So I want to dig into that because we've had some internal discussions here around like where to put the goalpost. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of like throwing it way out there, going after it. And if you only get halfway or 3/4 there, like you're probably still better off than if you set it, a short distance and you actually get it. But I've had some people on my team go, well, that number or that milestone looks so far out and it kind of is debilitating or it's just intimidating. And so then it almost is like, well, are we ever going to get there? So I'm curious, Wes, what you think about that, since you said, hey, throw that 50 million out there and then kind of you get there when you get there.
Well, and I think the folks that you're having that debate with are, I think, correct in that I think it's human nature to want to be successful. And so you have to set up goals or milestones or systems, probably more like that you can be successful in frequently and get lots of good positive feedback and that will eventually, it might start to accelerate and get you to that ultimate goal. If you just say, hey, yeah, I want to be $50 million company sometime, you know, then that can be very, you know, people look at that and go, well, I don't know how that would happen. But if you can draw the path, if you can say, well, if we did this every day or every week, at some point we will get there. I think when you set the goalpost, even for yearly sales goals, it's like, hey, we're going to be $2 million this year, and you're $1 million this year. And at the end of the year, you got to 1.5. That's a huge win, right? I mean, you know, you go, oh, that's a huge win, but it was a failure because you set the goal at 2 million and you only made 1.5. So depending on how your psychological makeup is, you're going to look at that as either a success or a failure. A lot of people are going to look at that as a failure.
I think if you're in a position, Spence, of, you know, you're the, if someone's a business owner, you can do the rationalization of, you know, wait, 1.5 was good enough. Yeah, we wanted to get to 2, but, you know, there's a lot of great things that happened for 1.5, but only the business owner gets to make that rationalization. Everybody else has to just deal with the consequences of, oh, we set the goal at 2, we made 1.5. Maybe their compensation set up around that. They didn't make the 2. So now they haven't made their personal financial goals if they have them. Yeah, it's just been like, oh, you know, we didn't do it. So then the whole company's kind of like, oh, we didn't make it, you know. So shorter, closer goals. I mean, you can have this big number way out in your head. You know, a lot of business owners do. You know, they have, hey, here, I want to get to there, and I'll just navigate that the whole time until I get there. But you need a lot of smaller, I think, shorter term, smaller goals, because not everyone in your company is going to be with you for 30 years. You know, whatever your time horizon is, you know, for your company.
That's right. That's a good point, Brooks.
They're like, hey, I'm here for a year. I'm here for 2 years. I like it while I'm doing it, but I might get married and move to somewhere else, or I might, or this is working while my kids are in school, and, you know, I'm doing so. Only the business owners, you know, have that kind of long range picture, hopefully. And I think it's their job to help their team navigate that and give them smaller goals to help them work their way forward.
Yeah, I like that, Brooks, because if you want the team wins, and like you said, if people, if their average tenure at a company, you know, especially a young company, people are moving rapidly, you know, they might be there for 2 years, 5 years, but they're not there for 30. So you got to set it up so everyone's getting wins together. They feel like they're making progress together. And even as people, if they're just there for a year, within that year, they're experiencing success. Or within 2 years, they're still experiencing success with the company and as a team, and feel like they're contributing to the proper direction. But yeah, they're not going to look at it the same way that you do as a business owner.
I think that's a great point, which is giving the team, you know, they have stretch goals, but opportunities for success while they're all there together as a team. And if you think about all your employees and what they're, you know, like Wes says, what's their average tenure, and, you know, how can teams have success together as people come and go? Because people, you know, one of our goals as a company was always, hey, we don't necessarily have a place for you to move up to after you do this job, but we want to help you as much as we can, so you're prepared to make, you know, get that promotion and move on. And we expect you to move on from here, because we're not going to grow big enough for you to get all the opportunities here. So we knew people were going to come and go. So if you can provide those successes for people so they can then take that experience and go find a new job and say, hey, look at all the success I had here at this company. And then they move on, because people are going to move on, you know, and it's probably one of the least talked about things in business, where everyone knows people are going to come and go, but no one really talks about, hey, Bob, you know, it's great you're here. We're excited about you starting, you know, what are you thinking for how long you'd be working here? Oh, I'll be here forever. You know, 2 years later, Bob's gone.
Yeah, life happens, life happens. And
that's not a
so,
criticism.
yeah, no, nothing wrong with that. That's the way it is. We've all been there ourselves, different jobs. And so I think, yeah, if you're just throwing out those long-term 10-year goals and 5-year stretch goals and everything, you don't know. A lot of people in their head could be just going, yeah, I'm not going to be here. So I'm not engaged.
Yeah. Is it better for your, at the board level or at the ownership level, you can have all those longer range goals because that's where you're thinking about those kind of things. And then you distill it down into those, smaller bite-sized pieces so that the team can say, yeah, well, this is what we're trying to do this year. And, the board knows, hey, that's part of our 30-year plan, but this is year one of 30.
Yeah, I think it's your job as a manager through the goal setting system, which I'll still go back to the system setting system, but is ultimately where you want to go for the company, or your leadership team does. And then you are trying to develop systems within your company that people can measure themselves against and execute, that allows them to be successful in the short term. And so if they're doing their job and executing properly on those systems, they should get you to your goals eventually, or ultimately. If they're not, then it's your responsibility as the manager to go, what's wrong with that system? What did I do? What's wrong with my sales system? Or what's wrong with my accounting system? Or what's wrong with my customer service system? Or how have I set it up so it's not getting us to the goal? Because if your folks are executing on your system and doing it properly and being successful in that and doing it, but you're not getting to your goals, then it's your job to adjust that, not theirs, I think.
Do you think there's any value or a time to share that long range goal and have the short ones, or?
Sure.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, to say, hey, here's, this is, everyone realized for the most part, most businesses are owned by individuals or couples or, small partnerships. And, they're going to have 20 people in them or 30 people in them. But the owners may have some pretty lofty goals of where they want to get to. And they can say, hey, we want to get to 50 million. That's one of my lifetime achievement goals here. But this year we're going to work on this. I think nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And I think on the converse, I think you need to be honest with your employees as well. As if you're like, this is our sweet spot. We're not going to grow from here, or I'm going to be retiring in 5. That's good for them to know, because you don't want to mislead them as to what the ultimate goal of the company is. If you're in there, you're thinking you're going to retire in 5 or 10 years, and you're telling everybody, oh, we're going on for 30 years and that. Well, that you're not being honest, and you're being disingenuous. And so I think that's not fair to the folks that are there, because there are good people out there that would be very happy working for a company that it's a comfortable job, it's a successful company, it's not going to grow much bigger than it is. And that's okay, because that meets everyone's goals. Then you need people in there that can support that. So you don't want to mislead people as to where the company's going. Or if you're a hard charging company, people need to know that too, because they're going, well, I don't know if I want to sign on for that. Like you think about Microsoft in the early days, the folks that went to work for Bill Gates, they had to be willing to go, well, he's going to work 18 hours a day. I got to be able to step up to that. And if you weren't.
Same thing with Amazon. If we're here in Seattle, and anyone who goes to interview with Amazon knows it's 60 to 80 hours a week. You're paid very well, but that's all you do.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You want everyone to know whatever the situation is, and so you get the right people there, and maybe they stay longer because it's a better fit. But knowing that they're not going to be there for the duration of the company.
Right.
Well, Brooks, as we kind of wrap up this discussion on goal setting, and when this comes out, I think we'll be 2 weeks into the new year. any final thoughts or advice for anybody listening on how to make 2021 successful in terms of goal setting, planning,
Well,
that sort of thing?
Folks listen to this, of course, I'll have accomplished all my goals for the year. I'd say I mean, I think the thing that's worked best for us has been, setting it on your calendar, just whatever you want to do, once a month, once a week, once a quarter, whatever you think is going to be helpful. Check back on your goals and just hold yourself accountable to that. And whether you need to get a spouse or a partner or someone to say, hey, I want to go through these goals once a month, will you help me do that? Get someone else so you don't just blow it off your calendar. I think that's the best thing you could do. And you'll find you'll have a much more successful year. You'll feel better about the year, feel better about your goals. I think it's the number one thing you could do.
Cool. Yeah. How about you, Wes? Any final thoughts?
Well, I think I'd first start off with some book recommendations just for fun. But I think in this area, I think picking up, if you haven't read The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, it's a good one, very quick read. We've all read it. I think everyone in our family has read that book. It's really helpful. I think The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg is also an important book, because I think the more that we can routinize things in our lives that that are regular things that we need to do, the more it'll free up our time and brain energy to work on those bigger, high level problems and issues around your company and your life. So I think The Power of a Habit is a good one. It also will show you how to break bad habits. I think one of the things we can always do is we can also lots of times be much more effective just by getting rid of some things that we're doing that are negative, that really don't help us. It's not like, oh, I'm going to do all these great habits. It's like,
Right.
Well, here's some bad habits. If I just stop doing these things and replace them with a neutral habit, our life would be better, and I'd make a lot more forward progress. And the last one is kind of a real practical book called Getting Things Done by David Allen. And so that was a really helpful book to me when I read it about 10 years ago, because my desk always looked like a bomb blew up on it, and all over my office, and things stacked around the office. And after reading that book, it really allowed me to control clutter and paper, and how to make sure that your top goals and things that you're trying to get accomplished to stay where they need to be. You don't waste a lot of time revisiting things that you don't need to revisit. So I recommend that one, Getting Things Done. I think I like what Brooks said. I would just add to that I think if you can create a system out of anything, that will help you get to those goals faster, and try to make them small, high repetition systems.
And that's where the EMS comes in, because it's all about systems and just. Yeah. So instead of everything being a crisis in work or life, it's like, well, this seems to come up every week. Wonder what we could do about that.
Yeah, right. So yes, so throw that on your reading list too. We talked about before, E-Myth by Michael Gerber. Excellent. Cool.
Yeah, that's a good reading list right there. Since we're all readers, I'll throw in a couple more. Okay, Atomic Habits, James Clear.
Right.
And you mentioned the Habit one by Duhigg, but yeah, and James Clear has a lot of good stuff on his website and blog about it. You talked a lot about it today, Wes, which is just, he's a big systems person, systems versus over goals. I kind of like to have both, because I like having that target, but I think without the system, you're never working towards anything. And then the 4 disciplines of execution one that I mentioned earlier just helps with that whole concept of the leading indicators, which is really just a system, but it's what am I going to do today or this week that I think is contributing towards the goal. And then you can just say, hey, I did those 2 things this week. Great. Then you actually feel successful. You feel good about making progress. And then in a month and 3 months, you'll see if you're making progress, but then you can adjust, and then you can control that a little bit. Well, cool. Well, I think with that, we'll wrap. And Wes, did you have one more thought?
I think there's another one. Tiny Habits is another one along the same theme if you're just reading a bunch of books on habits and small incremental changes. I think I just looked that one up. It's BJ Fogg is the, I feel like I read that one, and that was also, just slightly different take, but same thing.
Well, this is going to throw you guys for a loop. So this is the book I would suggest is The Book of Delights by Ross Gay. So this guy,
I've never heard that one.
He wrote a book. What he did is every day he sat down and, he's a writer, obviously. So he'd write, what did he find delight in today? Mm-hmm. So I listened to an interview with him the other day, and he was talking about it. And he's like, I had to move this tomato plant from, a friend gave me a tomato plant when I was visiting him, and I had to do this tomato plant. We had to fly somewhere else. And he's like, how am I going to get the tomato plant? And, the delight he got out of carrying this tomato plant through the airport and people's reaction to it. You'd be like, well, this is a pain in the ass. I got to carry this tomato plant, and just the experience, and just, it was really fun to listen to, and just listen to, that's pretty cool. Every day he would write about, and then, he took all 365 days, and I don't know if they all made it into the books. I haven't read the book. I just listened to the interview, but it was just a delightful interview, because you're just like, oh, Book of Delights, and it'd be another good thing to read along with all this other stuff you're grinding through as a business owner. Is like, oh, look at this, because there's a lot of.
What was his name again, Brooks?
I pulled up The Book of Delights by Ross Gay, Gay. Okay. And I think I'm going to see if they have it on Audible, because the guy's just got a great voice. I'm hoping he narrated it, because super cool. So that's kind of a fun one when you're a little tired, you're driving home from work, and you're like, whew, if I have to think about one more tiny habit, I'm going to drive off the road.
Well, that was perfect. You brought us full circle there. We started with gratitude. We'll end in delight. So we'll tie this up with a bow. But yeah, thanks guys, and thanks everybody for listening. Hopefully you're on your way to working towards those 2021 goals. And as always, we'll see you next week here on Building a Family Business on Builder Funnel Radio.